Greetings viewers and welcome back. This video that you're watching is going to be split into two parts. In the first part, I'm going to cover all of the things that you will need and be required to have in order to play a game. Once I'm done showing you those items, I will let you know that I'm moving on to the next section where I will show you things you may want later on. They are by no means required to play, they're just kind of nice, a little bit different options that are sold by another company, and something that you may possibly want to look at later to add a little bit of flavor when you're playing your games. So obviously you see in front of you the main 40K rulebook. I've shown this to you before, I've kind of mentioned it. It has all the main rules for the game. It tells you how to start a game, how to play a game, how to set up a game, how all your models interact with each other regardless of which army they are from. It's hardback, it's about 300 pages. Again, it has all the main rules. It comes with a section in there on the fluff and history of each individual army, as well as showcasing different painted models from each of the armies. The next item that I'm going to show you is the actual codexes for each individual army. You will need to purchase both of these books. These books do not have the main rules for the game in it. They again are for your individual or specific army out of the 14 races available. This covers all the individual units with a little bit of a history of each unit, how much points they cost as far as putting them into your list to play a game, the individual stats, and all specific war gear or spells or items that are specific to your army only. It has sections, again, showcasing the individual models painted up and maybe some strategies and things you can do. Okay, so you're going to need both of these books to play. You can't just buy one. You got to get both of them. They want to get their money out of you. Next thing you're going to need is a tape measure. You're going to need a tape measure that measures inches. There are hundreds of companies out there that make these things. I happen to pick these up at the hardware store. Games Workshop also sells a little small dinky version of it. It's not very big, it's not very expensive, and it still does the same purpose. Again, you're going to need one that measures in inches. I personally would recommend going with a smaller one. I'm hoping I can help you learn from my mistakes. I just grabbed this one. It was the first thing I saw on the shelf. It's a 25-foot tape measure, which I have absolutely no need for on a 6-foot by 4-foot table. It's a lot bigger, heavier, and bulkier, and just kind of a general pain to carry around. And if you happen to drop this thing or it gets out of control on the table, it's got a tendency to cause a little bit of damage. So go with a smaller one. This one's 12 feet. I haven't needed anything much bigger than this, again on a 6 by 4 table. And it serves its purpose well, and it stores and transports easily. So keep that in mind when you're picking it up. Try to go with one of the smaller ones available. Save yourself a little bit of a headache and some trouble. The next thing you are going to need to have in order to play any type of game of 40K is some dice. There, again, are numerous companies available to purchase these from. They come in a variety of styles, colors, sizes, and anything you could just imagine. These dice here are the 12mm dice. They are a lot smaller. They come in this cube from Games Workshop. It also has a little scatter die I'm going to cover in just a second, and this one also has a little die in there that's required for the fantasy game if you play Warhammer Fantasy. So you can pick this up for either one of the games. You're just going to end up with one extra die you probably won't use. Maybe you can find someone else that plays the other game and trade with them. Again, different colors. The Chess X dice, which I use, come in these little plastic cubes with the black bottoms on them. The smaller dice, which are, again, the 12mm dice, actually you get a little bit more than you do with the 16. They come in a similar container. But I tend to not like the smaller dice as much. They seem to bounce and roll around on the table much more than the bigger dice. I don't know why. Maybe it's just my imagination. But they always seem to end up on the floor and running away from me. I spend more time chasing the dice than I do actually rolling them. So you can see kind of a little bit of a size comparison here. They're just not that much smaller, but you know, this just makes a little bit of a difference. So you can roll more of them at a time. If you've got maybe a large army and you're always rolling a whole bunch of dice, it may be a little bit more beneficial to go with some of the smaller dice than some of the bigger ones. I recommend getting at least 2 to possibly even 3 different colors. For the large dice I use, I have red, gray, and green. I use these basically, and you would be suggested to do the same if you have different colored dice, to use them in a unit where you may have mixed guys that are not all the same. If everybody in the unit's exactly the same, one color will cut it for you. But some of the times we have guys with different weapon options, or maybe they have a special character attached to their unit. In order to kind of get the game flowing a little bit faster and rolling everything all at one time, you set aside each individual color for each guy in the unit that's different. Designate it with your opponent beforehand, who gets what color and what they need. You roll all of them at one time, take out all the ones that miss, and you keep moving on. Instead of taking one color and kind of saying, okay, this guy's going to shoot, roll the dice. Okay, this guy's going to shoot, roll the dice. makes it go a little bit faster. So just something to keep in mind when you're out there purchasing your gaming supplies. Again, as I mentioned, the scatter die. The scatter die consists of a die that has 2 hit markers, one on one side, one exactly opposite. The other 4 sides of the dice are reserved for these little arrow markers here. They all point the same way. What this is used for, if you're shooting something that has a tendency to be unreliable, or maybe your guys are dropping in on the game board, you'll roll one of these with whatever designated number of 6-sided dice, and whatever it lands on, if it lands on a hit, whatever it is you're having land there is going to go there. If it lands on an arrow, you're going to combine the direction of that arrow with whatever number is displayed on the dice, and then you're going to head in the direction of the arrow however far it tells you to. So again, there's a whole variety of colors and designs out there. Just find the one that you want, maybe something that suits the color scheme of your army, and then it'll work just fine for you. So something else to look at. And the final item that you are going to need in order to play the game, if supposing your army has these type of weapons, or you get to that point where you start adding them into your army list, you're going to need templates. Again, you can always borrow them from your opponent. I'll get into the whole etiquette thing when it comes to gaming in another video. However, for now we're just going to stick to this. These are available from Games Workshop. They come in a nice bright green plastic, so they're easier to see on the table, less likely to lose in the middle of a game or leave on the table if you're leaving your gaming store. These templates, this smaller one, in case maybe there's some of you at home that don't feel like purchasing this from Games Workshop and giving them some more of your hard-earned money, you can always make them on your own. You're going to need to make it out of something clear. Some kind of clear plastic is perfect. You will need to see through it simply because when you put this over a unit to shoot at them, you got to be able to see what you're shooting at. So if it's a solid piece of plastic, you can't see them, you can't really accurately count and look at what you're shooting at. This smaller one, for those of you at home that may be interested in creating your own, is 3 inches in diameter. You're going to need a little bit of a hole in the center, and the large one is 5 inches. As far as creating your own flame template, if you plan on doing that, I'll kind of show you just real quick the size dimensions on here from tip to tip. And then the little circle is about 2 1/4 inch at the end. So that's up to you if you want to do that. If you're going to make your own flamer template, I recommend borrowing somebody else's and tracing it and then cutting it out on your own. So that pretty much wraps it up for the items that you're going to need in order to play the game. I'm going to move on now to a couple options that I've purchased for things that you may want. This comes from an objective marker set from Games Workshop, made out of the same green plastic as the template. It's easier to see and harder to lose on the table. Not saying it can't happen, but it's less likely to. Bunch of little different things on here. These come with little status markers for a vehicle if you shoot at it and get a different result, such as a broken weapon on it, or maybe it's not allowed to move, or it can't shoot, whatever the deal is. You just put this on top of the vehicle. Again, it's easier to see. If that vehicle wants to do something, you remember, oh, well, it's got that marker on there. I'm not allowed to do that this turn. Little arrows kind of tell you which way your guys need to run, or that maybe they're running away from battle. A little bit of a reminder again. These are objective markers. They're like little flags. You can just kind of put them down, and during an objective game, they become quite useful. So again, these are not required to play. Each one of these individual things can easily be represented by dice, which is what most people do. If, let's say, the vehicle is immobilized, they'll put a number 4 on top of the vehicle, and that's all you need to know, and it goes that way. This just, again, adds a little bit of character, something a little bit extra to the table while you're playing your games. These items are all from Gale Force 9. I will put their link in the section below. Got a couple things here. This is a turn counter. Obviously, most people use this or represent this with dice. I just bought this because it looked kind of cool with the skull on there. It is magnetic. It does come with an extra base. If you want to have a little guy from your army stuck on that base and kind of use him to point at whichever turn it is, that's also an option available for this. And you just kind of spin it, obviously, each turn that you go to. So, not a big deal there, just something fancy to have on the table. This would be a little flame marker. These come in a pack of 6, as do the little smoke markers. Again, these can easily be represented by putting dice on top of a vehicle, but it just makes it a little bit more visually appealing when you look at it on the table rather than having a bunch of dice stacked on top of stuff. So, adds a little bit of color and character to your game. Not required by any means. These are the Take Action markers sold by Gale Force 9. They come in a pack of 6. You get 3 red and you get 3 yellow ones. These are used to kind of draw your attention to things on the table. If perhaps you don't want to purchase the little green marker set I mentioned earlier and a unit's falling back, or doing something that you may not remember or have a potential to forget, you can put this next to them. I'll put this next to my guys that I need to remember maybe at the beginning of a turn to use a special ability or something that I always catch myself forgetting. these are always good to kind of draw your attention, so before you start your turn you can look around the table, see and go, oh, yep, I need to remember to do that, rather than try to just remember everything all at once with all the other stuff that's usually going on. So that pretty much covers it for all the stuff you're going to need and the stuff that you may want to play the game. If there's anything else you'd like to see in more detail or you have any more questions, please feel free to comment below. If you liked what you saw, please like the video. I will come back in the next video and I will go over all the stuff that you will need and perhaps some stuff that you will want while you are assembling, painting, and creating your army. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.